Welcome to the Imagine in America podcast. I'm Vida Ajamu, Chief Engagement Officer here at the National Civil Rights Museum. Today we are joined by three incredible entrepreneurs who will share a lens through economic justice and the role of business in equity. Sheena Allen is an entrepreneur and product architect who built 5 top apps and one of the youngest Black-owned digital banks, all as a non-technical founder. She now builds ventures and advises founders from idea to scale. Robert Higgins Jr. is founder and CEO of Make a Play Hospitality Group, with 20 plus years creating standout dining and nightlife experiences rooted in culture and community. Seth Cohen is a founder of Applied Optimism and Optimistic Labs, advising organizations on innovation and impact. He's a former Chief Impact Officer at Forbes and creator of the Forbes Impact Lab. Welcome to the Imagine in America podcast. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you for having us.
So let's dive in. I have plenty of questions for you. The first one is for all of you. Dr. King said, freedom without economic opportunity isn't real freedom. When did you first feel the gap between freedom and real economic issues or access?
I guess I'll start it off. So with me, I think I learned at a young age. Necessarily, I was 18, 19. I was an entrepreneur. Coming from St. Louis, I thought everybody got a fair shot at just doing business. So I would go to different event spaces and try to rent them out, pay whatever their fee was. I found it hard to rent out these event spaces. I found it hard, one, because of my color. Second, because of the institution I went to. It was a double whammy. I was Black and I went to Tennessee State University. So as I continued to try to rent out spaces, I learned that people used to tell me, do the opposite. Get a white guy that goes to Vanderbilt and you'll get the spaces. So I made friends with a white guy that went to Vanderbilt and he could get those same spaces with less experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mine was probably also college years. I went to the University of Southern Mississippi, so I went to a home state school, but I love my school, but it was my last choice. So I wanted to go to, I had a few choices, Stanford, Duke, LSU, some of my top ones. I got in, but when I didn't get the scholarship, I didn't want my parents to have to pay the out-of-state tuition. And so I had other friends who didn't get the scholarship. They came from wealthier backgrounds, and so it was kind of that first look into, if I have to pay for it myself or if my parents have to pay for it, it's going to be much harder on them than it would be if I came from a background of different types of means. So I think that was my first kind of look into the difference in what wealth can get you and the freedom that money can give you as far as choices.
Thank you. Seth?
I think what really opened my eyes when I moved to Atlanta after law school, and I really saw the epidemic of homelessness in our city. I really saw the delta between haves and have-nots. And I can recall just thinking to myself, but for the grace of God go I. But it wasn't the grace of God. It was my skin color. It was my gender. It was the background that I was coming from. I understood that there was something very different about what creates opportunity, and it wasn't just whether it was God's blessings or not. It was systems that needed to be addressed and systems around the economics in the world we live in that needed to be changed. And I felt that viscerally as a young person just making my way in the world.
Thank you so much for that transparency from all of you. It's super important and it's very helpful for all of us to hear that, right? And that awareness that each of you experienced, it clearly shaped how you built, right? How you moved forward. So Sheena, good question for you. with Capway, you didn't just build an app, you built an infrastructure. Let me start that question over. Okay. Sheena, with Capway, you didn't just build an app, you built the infrastructure. Why was owning the system more important than how fast you got it done?
Yeah, so Capway was a digital bank. I ran a fintech company, and the original idea of the company was I want to build a digital bank for people who were unbanked and underbanked. Again, from Mississippi, unfortunately, Mississippi had the highest population of unbanked and underbanked residents. So that was the original idea. But once I started actually building it, it came down to I can build a product, and I can put this product in what was meant to be a good ecosystem of products and services. But if I don't actually own the infrastructure, or if I don't build the infrastructure, this is going to be a really pretty house on a very weak foundation. And so if no one's ever built a bank or done really anything in the financial technology or in the financial industry, for one, it's highly regulated. But for two, if you don't actually build as much as you can and get a very strong foundation, the financial industry, economic equality, it is a systematic issue without question. But we do have an infrastructure issue too, and it takes time. It takes money. It's a large investment, and I do think one of the biggest problems that we have and why we haven't been able to fix the infrastructure is the right investment in time. Not just money, but time is also that. And so for me, it was, I'm not going to throw a bank up in 6 months. It might take me 6 years to get it right, but if you have a solid foundation, you have that right infrastructure, it's the 60 years that's going to last for 60 years, not something's going to fall apart in another 6 years.
Right. So the idea of building around barriers, Rob, that actually shows up in your journey as well.
Right.
So if you could really talk a little bit more about what doors were closed for you and how did you move anyway? I mean, you just kept moving. How did you do that?
I think I got so many doors closed on me, I don't even know what an open door looked like at this point in my life. I always believe that there's a God that, keeps a brick in the door for me to slither on through. So I can tell you just by most recent, like I said, it's so many doors closed. We can talk about that for 3 podcasts. But so recently they have one of my restaurants, they caught on fire on 4th of July, firework. And 2 months later, they put an ordinance in play to say that there couldn't be any more bars or lounges with patios or amplified music, and had to close at 12. They put an ordinance a month and a half after my building burned down. No one knew about the ordinance. No one said nothing about the ordinance. It just popped up on the same street. This is the only ordinance like this in the whole city of Nashville. It came about once my place burned down. So that was a slight to say, all right, his place is burned down. Now we're not going to allow him to open back up, But, with those doors closing and things happening, we have a voice, we have a platform. We start talking about it. We start telling people about it, like, hey, this is what the city council is trying to do. And it put a halt in it. Well, at least it made them add stuff to the ordinance that said, all right, if you're grandfathered in, if you're already doing business, you're grandfathered in, you can still do business. But before then, it was like, you're gone. You can't come back. And I feel like that was very systematic in the door closing. But like I said, God always keeps that brick in the door to keep, let me slither on through.
You know what? I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that because I truly believe that must be a brick or a stick for me too at times, right? But it also speaks to how much your voice matters, right? And being able to advocate for yourself is super important. And it really leads right into the bigger question of access, and especially as it relates to capital. Seth, I'm going to come to you in just a moment, but I want to follow up here with Sheena and Rob really quickly. So what's the biggest barrier to capital for underrepresented founders? And what is it that you think that actually will fix it?
I think I'll speak more particularly from a black female perspective. I do startups, I do tech. So most of the time we're looking for venture capital dollars, or even if it's angel investors. And the numbers are the numbers. We get less than 1% of VC dollars. So it's a very much of an uphill battle to get money. I think there's two things that it's a lot, but if I had to pick probably two that may be even. One, unfortunately, as Black founders, a lot of times investors put us in a box that all Black founders are building companies for just Black people. And of course, when you're an investor, you're looking for the next unicorn because you need to 10x, 100x your money. And a lot of them look at, if you're a Black founder building for just a Black audience, the audience is too small for me to be able to get my 100x return. So that's not going to be a unicorn. The target market, the audience is too small. That's one thing that I think is unfortunate, because a lot of us are building companies for everybody. We're trying to get to international audiences, not just building as a Black founder building for Black people. The second thing that I think plays a role is, particularly for women, we've always just had, I tell the story of when I first pitched to an investor and he told me I pitched like a girl. And when he said that, he explained it afterwards, which was a lot of times minorities and women, we pitch because we already don't get enough funding. It comes off in our pitching. We're pitching like, I really need this money. Like, this idea is great, but I really need this check. Versus when a man, particularly a white male, pitches, they pitch with such confidence, as if like, if you don't invest in this company, you're stupid. Like, you're missing out by not investing in this company. So like, this is your loss, not mine. So it's also a confidence thing, but it does come from the fact that a lot of times we really do need that money. So even though we don't want to come off like we need it, depending on if like the company about to shut down, like, something needs to be due, you might just unconsciously come off in that pitch that way because we don't get the funding. So that's something that I know it's a level of confidence too that we have to get to. But a lot of times it's just an area of need, and it's, you go into that pitch and you're just trying to close the deal.
Yeah. Rob?
I think that, just to piggyback, I think I'll start with bank funding. When you go to a bank and you say you want to do something in hospitality, restaurant or something, it's automatically you open restaurants are already shaky. So when you open a restaurant and you tell them what kind of restaurant, they're automatically going to assume you're Black, a black owned business, Black. That's the first thing that's thrown out. When in actuality, you put me in a box. I'm a green owned business. I want everything.
Right.
I'm not. I'll open the doors to anybody that want to spend their money. But I think that being a young Black male walking into those rooms, they already, you get stereotyped when you walk in. You know what I mean? So it's like, I would try to, I would see business. I used to see a lot of buildings up for sale, and I was like, hey, I would love to get that building. Not knowing at that age that, a building that costs $1.3 million, that you didn't actually have to pay $1.3 million, that you put something down and all this. Right. Like, they never educated me really on that. So when I used to go to the bank and I'd be like, or when I seen other counterparts open businesses that were failing, I would say, hey, how did you open this? Well, we got a bank loan. I'm like, what bank did you go through? Hey, we went to this bank. So I go to that bank and they're like, well, we're not doing entertainment loans. We're not doing restaurant loans. Or it would be so many hoops you have to jump through that I got it out my mind that I was ever going to be able to get a loan to get a business. I just had to grind up my own money and get to a point where, as Sheena said, that where they needed me, where they realized like, hey, you'll be crazy not to invest in this person. Rather it be give me a loan to buy a building or invest in my business if the opportunity allotted for you, but not for me. So it's kind of like I just got to the point where I quit depending on that because my foundation and the people that supported me was so strong that I never had to fall back on a bank to get a business off the ground.
Wow.
But I will say quickly, one of the barriers, thinking of when he was saying like I'm gonna grind it out on my own, the problem also for us is I think as minorities, we historically, generationally, we don't have the family and friends that we can piggyback off of and say, hey, I got this idea for a business. I need $50,000. I need $100,000. Whereas a lot of times your white male counterpart, not everybody, but I've definitely seen way more of my white male counterparts or female counterparts can go to dad's boss or somebody who can say, here's $50,000. Nobody in my family I can ask for $50,000. I mean, there are some people who are out there that I think it's a whole different podcast, but I still think Black America is coming to grips with what it means to be wealthy, and it's okay to be wealthy, and it's okay to have a Nepo baby. I'm fine. I want my child to not get out the mud. Here's $50,000 to go start your business. But right now we're just not there, and that's another barrier because we don't have the opportunity to go to someone in the family or a friend of the family from a networking perspective or a wealth perspective to get that foundation money.
That makes a lot of sense. And even in some cases, if the money is there, they've worked so hard for it and afraid that the money will be lost, right? So if you've been saving all of this money, and then if I give it to my kid on a hope and a prayer,
they're gonna lose it.
They're gonna lose it. So yes, I totally understand that. So that gap between awareness and action shows up beyond business too. Seth, you talk a lot about applied optimism.
Yes, ma'am.
What does applied optimism really mean?
So, well, thanks for the question. Applied optimism to me is, look, the secret that I tell people is I'm not really an optimist. I mean, look, if you're looking around 2026, it's tough to think everything's the best possible world. It ain't the best possible world. So most of us have to wake up in the morning and get there. We have to do something in our mind to believe that we're going to make the change, to get through that door, to get that money, to figure out what is going to move the ball forward. And what I talk about is a gritty kind of optimism. It's not toxic positivity, but it's that sense of purpose. What am I doing today? Why am I doing it? Knowledge. How am I going to do it? Who can help me do it? Where can I learn those lessons? And then this X factor of wonder, which is, dang, I did that. Like, I made that app. I opened that restaurant. I did that. And so optimism is something you do intrinsically yourself, and then it's something that grows when you find allies, when there's really someone there that makes sure you don't feel like you need to do it alone.
That's right. Well, so this is going to just kind of lead me into my next question. Want to make sure that I ask this question of you. And you talked about really mindset, right, and strategy and how it connects, and that's super important. And that's in organizations as well as individuals. So, Seth, where does awareness break down before it becomes real accountability?
Okay, this is also this is a great question, and I'm going to go back to my days at Forbes. Recently, you mentioned I started the Forbes Impact Lab. The project I'm even more proud of was I helped start something called ForbesBLK, and one of the reasons why we created that as part of the Forbes Impact Lab and through my work was I walked into a 100-plus-year-old media organization. There wasn't a black executive at the top of the organization. There wasn't a black executive editor in the newsroom. And one of the first things I felt fundamentally to me was you can't serve who you can't see. And when you looked around at the world, Forbes was a brand that was epic. And in the black community, epic as well. It was in hip hop songs. It was a standard by which there was kind of a cultural aspiration to, but there was a very few number of black business leaders and executives on the cover. And like I said, there wasn't anyone really in the organization at that level. And so what that made me realize is you just can't serve who you can't see. And so that awareness comes from really looking around and looking past your own hands and looking past your own seat at the table and wondering who's not there instead of just who's there. And to me, that's one of the most fundamental elements of not just building an important organization that serves its customers and serves its, but that is the fundamental element of economic justice and inclusion is you got to know who you're not seeing so you can build systems for the people that you want to see.
You guys are dropping so many gems. That's, it really speaks to a saying that those closest to the problem are closest to the solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes those are the people that's left from the discussion. So, which leads to the bigger question, right? About the role of business itself. And this is for all of you to answer. Can business actually drive equity, or does it just change who benefits?
I think both, honestly. It depends on how you're building your business. If you build a business and it's a privately owned business, you choose if you want to discriminate who it's for. However, I think when you look at the numbers, you worked at Forbes, when you look at billionaires, real estate and entrepreneurship is where it comes from. So I think entrepreneurship is key, and that's why I know I'm always pushing my nieces, my nephews, people in my community. Entrepreneurship is hard, by the way. Let me say that too. Like, owning a business is extremely tough, and it's not for everybody. Some people are better off punching the clock 9 to 5, getting their steady income, and that's okay too. But I do think owning a business, entrepreneurship, numbers are the numbers, is one of the quickest ways, not quick, nothing is quick about entrepreneurship. It is one of the proven ways of becoming wealthy, if and when done right.
I think that business definitely can build equity. I think that for me, I knew that my success would come by the things that I had to create. I never really had a 9 to 5. So, but I went to school to be a dentistry. I went to school to be a dentist. So it was kind of like, for me, what was I going to be a dentist for? Because what I saw on TV, I saw the Cosby, like, this is what success looked like. But then when I got into business and I realized, hey, I'm doing it because I want to be successful. What's success? Money. That's because when you come from nothing, all you want to do is have something. You know what I mean? Like, you just want the same thing you see when you drive past in the neighborhood and you see those big houses. It's like, man, who's staying in these houses? That's all I wanted, just one of those houses. So I knew if I become a dentist, I could do that, but I was doing it for money. When I got into entrepreneurship, I researched, how much does dentists make? I'm in entrepreneurship. How much am I making? Hey, I don't have to be a dentist. I'm already making what the dentists make. So all I have to do is learn how to scale what I'm doing, continue to do that, and grow. And when I realized that my future was in my hands, I just tried to shape that, as much as possible. And so when I'm in different rooms, knowing that I can create, entrepreneurship is very hard. It's it's the hardest thing that I have going on in my life. But I also know that I can shape my future by my hard work, my relationships, my network, and how I trust in God. I go about that every day. So when doors are closed on me, or when people look down and they like, who, they look at me and say, well, he can't have anything. Who is he? And I think in my head like, you don't know, I got more than him.
Right. Right.
So it's kind of like, hey, you just look at me how you want to, but I would have never got that opportunity if I wasn't an entrepreneur. Because if not, I'm not good at playing politics. I think when you work corporate, people always say corporate, you have to learn how to play corporate. I don't know how to play corporate because I believe fair is fair, right is right, wrong is wrong. Like when you think about when you walk into this museum, the Civil Rights Museum, and I see that, how they treated people. And it's like, that was only 60 years ago. It's like, I wouldn't stand a chance because what? I got to go to the back of the bus? I'm tired.
Right.
I can't go drink this water fountain. I just finished playing basketball. And it's ain't for me. Right. So it's kind of like you have to learn how to be less than. And I think that I believe in a higher power so much, and that everybody is beautifully structured. I can never put myself as less than another person or me greater than another person. So for me, I think that entrepreneurship was the only thing that God would allow me to do, because like I said, politics, I just can't do it. I can't put myself in a room and be belittled, or I cannot have employees that I will allow anyone to belittle. So it just doesn't work.
Oh, wow.
It's really interesting. It's become in vogue to not like capitalism. You're like, I'm anti-capitalist, I'm anti-business. And my answer a lot of times when I hear particularly some young folks talk about this, I'm like, well, do you like prosperity? Do you like your home? Do you like the trappings of the things that you want to have in your life? Because that comes from economic creation. That comes from wealth generation. And as long as I've lived, and I'm a poli-sci major graduate, very little wealth becomes created by the government. It's created by entrepreneurship, by business. So there's this idea of prosperity as the proxy for business. And then the second thing that I've kind of always appreciated is what are the incentives that are motivating you? And so much, and I live in Atlanta, and we've had lots of changes over the decades. We say we're the city too busy to hate. I sometimes like to say we're also try not to be the city too busy to love. But in Atlanta, we figured out that it's good business to create economic opportunity for everybody within our city, with everyone in our state. Like incentives, because if we're hateful, if we're discriminatory, if we don't see everybody as equal, we're going to lose. We're going to lose big business. We're going to lose the All-Star game for Major League Baseball. Incentives and business go hand in hand, and I think when those two work together, we create better opportunity and prosperity.
So you're in Memphis, right? So you've talked about Atlanta, Mississippi, and Tennessee, but you're in Memphis, and you had the opportunity to tour the National Civil Rights Museum, and you just spoke about it, right? Mm-hmm. So if you could really just share with me what, based on that information that you've gathered in Dr. King's fight for economic justice, what responsibility do you think this city carries?
Maybe I'll jump in first, because this today wasn't my first time at this museum. This is one of my favorite museums in America, and I also feel particularly a sense of connection today, this weekend, being in Memphis on this day, on Good Friday, on the day of the mountaintop speech. That's right. and on this hallowed ground. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there is a path forward in America around economic justice. It doesn't go through Memphis. I mean, the sanitation workers strike, the idea that we're going to demonstrate an appreciation for human dignity, the roadmap, the blueprint was written in this city. And I think that there's a lot of great things going on in Memphis. I want to open a business up here in Memphis. That's how impressed and proud I am of what's happening in this city. But I think we got to build more. Like, you can get to the mountaintop, as Dr. King said, on this date 58 years ago, but like, you got to keep climbing. And I think Memphis has figured out, even through the redevelopment of this area where this museum is, and the new building opening up in May, like, this is a roadmap for how things can get done is written in Memphis. So America should be paying attention to this city and this strategy.
Absolutely. And you spoke about the building that's opening is going to pick up after the assassination of Dr. King.
That's right. The work's not done.
Today.
That's right.
Right. So I want to hear from you guys. When you think about Dr. King and him coming to Memphis, as it related to fighting for dignity, fighting for fair wages, fighting for economic justice.
Well, this was my first time at the museum, mm-hmm. and absolutely amazing. Like, now I'm going to come back, and not to bring like my niece and my nephews, because I definitely want them to be able to see this and witness, the history. Clearly Dr. King was here for a reason, mm-hmm. and the South in itself is such a special place. But even what I already knew, but also learned, in the time of being able to go through the tour of the museum, Atlanta, Memphis, Jackson, Mississippi, but especially because of that speech he had here in Memphis, I feel that it's the job of us as people who are fighting for economic justice, mm-hmm. the job of, and what Memphis already have done and will continue to do, the fight, like, we literally have to continue something that he was literally fighting for. And I won't say anybody has dropped the ball, because life has been lifing. But I do think it's something special about the places that he chose, and he knew that it was an uphill battle in those locations, Memphis being one of them. So I think that Memphis has done a good job of highlighting the good and the bad, but they've also done a good job of saying we literally have to continue this fight. And so, again, love the museum, and I do think that again, us as people particularly me in the financial inclusion space, we look at places like Memphis because of, what was going on here when Dr. King was fighting for economic justice.
Right, it's the unfinished business.
It's unfinished business.
Yes, that we have to make sure that we carry forward. All of you have to make sure that you carry forward. Rob, would you like to add to that at all?
Yeah, I think that, so I always tell people this, that Memphis is one of the most, it doesn't get its fair share, because when I first started doing business in Memphis, I realized there was so many successful African Americans in Memphis. And I being in Nashville, it's like you would think that it would be more successful in Nashville, but I seen more people that look like me successful in Memphis than I did in Nashville. But one thing that I also see is that, how the world looks back at Memphis, you know what I mean? And I feel like that it needs to, it's all media. I think that Memphis needs a light shine on the beautiful thing that is Memphis, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's still been trying to, I don't honestly think there's a more historic city than Memphis with as much history when it comes to anything. You put anything, food, you put music, you put politics. Memphis can say we're in every category, but it doesn't get its recognition. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like ever since Dr. King, I feel like it's been a cloud that they never try to turn that gray cloud into sunny skies. And I feel like it just stays there for whatever reason, because you still got Elvis. You got all this great stuff that happens in Memphis, but for every 2 good things that they say about Memphis, you hear 4 bad. And I think that pushes away economics, because you don't get as much tourism, because who wants to go to a city that they're scared of? Mm-hmm. And I think that that's the first part that people don't talk about. If we just focus on the great things that happen in Memphis, more great will happen. It's this thing called, they say darkness can't run out of darkness, only light can do that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And, bad publicity, bad negativity only is going to bring more negativity.
That's right.
Let's focus on the positivity, because the kids that hearing it, they hear more positive stuff, they're going to grow up doing more positive things. But when you only focus on the negative things, they're going to push that, and the kids are going to continue to push that, and it's never going to make big business want to come to Memphis.
This is true, and it's about changing the narrative, right? But we need people like you and that feel so strongly about this city, people that's visiting this city, to share that as well and to share your experiences, because we need to let people know how important this place really is. So let's bring it down. Let's bring it down and talk about what people can actually do. For someone listening, what's one thing, if you could just give me one thing they can do tomorrow to move economic justice forward, what would you say?
Work on becoming more financially literate. And I'm not talking about the trendy, cliche, go learn financial literacy. I mean, real life, become financial literate. Mm-hmm. They're not going to teach it in school, and if they do, it's not going to be more of the real life, what you need to learn. And so it becomes the responsibility of the person. And I'm not saying it should be, because we should be teaching it in school. Mm-hmm. We should be having those conversations with parents. But we also have to take responsibility, because my grandmother had a saying of, it's hard for what you don't know. And so I do think part of economic justice is knowing, and we have to take some responsibility and start to know even for ourselves. So being financially literate is extremely, extremely important.
Yeah. Seth.
Yeah, I just used 3 letters, HIB, hire, invest, and buy. When I tell people, there's so many ways you can be performative about economic justice. You can put a sticker on your car. You can think that you're listening to a podcast or you're resharing a post. The things that create real change are hiring people without any kind of discrimination or elimination, investing in the best ideas, and looking in different places to find where those ideas are that can be invested, and then go buy. And today, again, in 2026, it ain't so easy to always go buy all the big things and the fancy things, but you can buy the things at the local businesses, at the people who are making real ground level economic change. And that's better than sharing any Instagram post or watching any TikTok.
Yeah. Rob, final thought.
I think that if some way, somehow, when it comes to music, TV, news, that we read, it's just 30 minutes a day of educating yourself in some way of financial literacy. I feel like whether it's real estate, stocks, whether it's just entrepreneurship or just becoming your 401k, it's so much stuff that we didn't learn in school that we are so far behind. But if we took the time to just pick up 30 minutes a day, it'll catch us up and we'll learn so much, because you can have, they say rich people aren't the ones who make the money, they're the ones who know how to keep the money and invest the money and know what to do with the money. So it's kind of like, just figure out, 30 minutes a day, just financial literacy, educate, and I feel like that'll change a lot.
Those are some great actionable things. Thank you for that. I want to thank each of you for your time today, for this powerful conversation, very impactful. I can't wait just to hear more from you and what you're doing. I'm going to be watching, but I really truly appreciate you joining us for today. Thank you for joining us for this conversation on Imagine in America. Subscribe, follow the podcast at imagineinamerika.org. Also, connect with us on civilrightsmuseum.org. Sign up for our newsletter. Stay connected and see what we are doing here. And better than that, come to the National Civil Rights Museum. We would love to have you. Thank you.
Today's episode is brought to you by the National Civil Rights Museum, located at the Lorraine Motel, the assassination site of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It chronicles key episodes of the American Civil Rights Movement, examines today's global civil and human rights history, provokes thoughtful debate, and serves as a catalyst for positive social change.